I am going to talk about architecting for customers. Well, don't we all architect, and don't we all do it for a customer eventually? Yes. Oh, well, first of all, this is my first summit. So why am I'm the Director of Automation and Engineering at DSA, CLA, CTD, CLA. The great thing about here is that I can present that resume and everybody can be like, eh, whatever, that's whatever, here. So I had to ask before coming down here. So I asked my mentor, and he said, well, tell them that you're Ben's personal CLE. So that's my mentor. He's kind of worked with me for a long time since I started using LabVIEW since '97. Been a professional LabVIEW developer for 13 years, been an architect 12 of those years. However, I'm a director, and what does that mean? Well, director is an engineer plus a sales quota, okay, essentially. And what I'm here to talk to you about is how do I make it easy for the customer to buy for you? Now, Mr. Kring set me up perfectly already here, because we all know we love to use LabVIEW. So who likes to get paid to do LabVIEW, right? Yeah, okay, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to do the first case study of a famous company. I signed an NDA with them, number one. And so this is interesting. This looks very Star Trek and futuristic. And you know, actually, your first guess about what this does is actually correct. You stick this up your nose. So you stick this up your nose to treat dry eye syndrome. So it goes up there, it stimulates your muscles correctly, makes your eyes water. Don't need to use drugs, don't need to use eye drops, anything like that. So it's a great medical device. I mean, I personally have had people affected by dry eye, everything like that. Way more convenient than pulling out a nose hair. All right, in general. So our customer contacted us and they had a whole suite of things that they needed to have done, all right? And when everything from regression testing through the PCBA testing to testing the final thing, to even just assigning the serial number to this thing. They originally just contacted us for regression testing. So they're like, hey, we need to keep iterating our firmware. We want to make sure it still does everything that it does as we're going forward. So they talked to me and they're like, hey, you do factory final testing too? Yes, we do, fantastic. Here are 4 quotes. So all of a sudden, they're very concerned that we're like, oh, you're doing all this work for us. Look at this big outlet of money that's going on here. This is where architecture can help you all right? We all talk about the modularity of architecture. We all talk about reuse of architecture as far as a development tool. It makes life easy for my developers. It also makes life easy for my customers, because what I can say is, yeah, you need Bluetooth functionality across all of these things. This is a fancy thing, it's wrapped in a thing, you need your Bluetooth functionality. Just as an example, there's all kinds of modules there. You only have to pay for it once, all right? I develop it here in my serial assignment fixture at the end, and I can distribute that all the way across all of these different items. So once you understand that if you're building something with a great, we've seen swappable modules, we've seen some really fancy stuff this week for that, and when you let your customer know that that's saving them money, then they buy into your architecture to a much higher degree, and they understand you're going for that lowest total cost of ownership. I know we always like to use that term for everything, all right? Now, I have company number 2 here. This looks like some sort of military radio or whatever kind of thing. This is actually kind of their version of a C-RIO, all right? They have this controller that they put into all of their devices, and it has a bunch of inputs, a bunch of outputs. We have to test them all. So it's like if I had a C-RIO and I had to give it a signal and say, hey, did you read the right signal? I have to tell it to generate a signal. Did you generate the right signal? And everything like that. Again, if I was just doing it for one device, there's one way I would approach it. But what we wanted was a test stand like this. I could put any device on there, connect any cable up to it, and make that plan for everything. So we had to make this test plan with my customer. I'm not expecting you to read this diagram. I just wanted to show how big it was in place for all this. So what you need is to make the customer your partner for this. We built this together. This is the kind of thing they would take to their vice president so that they could get more funding for the next project. Not all these projects have happened yet, but we have a plan for example, here. My test sequencer is going to be reused here, which is going to be reused here. So you can see as it propagates through all of the different items and where they can get the reuse out of it in each place. That gives you the value in all those places. I mean, I do love their naming convention. It was Grizzly, Grizzly Light, and Kodiak, and Koala, and they stuck with marsupials and went up to kangaroo. But we had this whole thing. Now, I want to show you the actual diagram here in Y-Edit. The neat thing about this is these different colors that you see here, these are different even groups in the company, all right? So the people we were dealing with up top, that's sterilization. We are also reusing this in their surgical light area. We were using this in their surgical table area. They had a LabVIEW user group that I got involved in, and I was able to use these things to propagate the whole thing. So we made like a custom test output that they could use across their whole company, and they loved that because they love to see automation. We love to see we are there to raise their standards, and we're getting people talking to each other that never talked to each other before that company. All right, so the value that I'm adding is not just the code that I'm writing. It's getting them on a standardization. It's getting them thinking. Our architecture is helping their company plan in the long term. All right, down to the last minute here. I did want to say that planning is kind of where you get out of that. So, for example, at DSA, we have this whole plan. Plan, implement, educate, support. You can see a bunch of things in there. Now, we've been talking about a bunch of these different things. Oh, geez, I lost my mic. All right, we've been talking about a bunch of these things. And, we focus on develop, test, deploy. But up front, you need to do things like verify and specify and all these kind of things. And if you do that at the company level, you can really get a lot of interesting things in here. Now, what I want to finalize out with here is, I'm really glad that I didn't lose everybody when I started bringing up sales earlier, right? That's kind of a big thing. But I've gone through what's called Sandler sales training, and it's closer to engineering than you might think. All right? Let me bring up a couple of quotes that come out of Sandler and see if they apply to engineering as well. The problem the prospect brings you is never the real problem. All right? We've certainly seen that. No mutual mystification. That means don't assume what the answer is going to be. Ask, find out the real answer. The best way to know the future is to bring it to the present. What is your solution going to look like? Now, I thought I was going to have a lot more time. That's my last 9 seconds here. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.